again, everybody. Welcome to It's All Write with Suzette. I'm Suzette Martinez Standring, and I'm the host of this TV show where we will explore the craft of writing for about a half an hour. And today, our wonderful guest is children's author Lauren McGrath, and she wrote If Boston Buildings Could Speak by Freddie the Fish. Lauren McGrath is a former pediatric occupational therapist and an older sister to 7 siblings, which tells you that she has spoken the language of children all her life. She is a proud retired National Park Service Interpretive Ranger from the Boston National Park, Historical Park, commonly known as the Freedom Trail. Lauren is differently abled, and she's here today with her little assistant in a dog suit, Honey Boy, her therapy dog, and it is such a pleasure to have you both on the show.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, Lauren and Honey Boy. So let me ask you, who's Freddie the Fish? All right, I tell you what, Honey Boy, let's let your mom do all the talking today. Who is Freddie the Fish?
Well, he's a made-up character that went to the Boston Harbor School and witnessed all these things happening to his harbor when all these white settlers arrived in Boston and started building ships and dirtying the water and fighting and yelling and making a mess.
So Freddie the Fish is talking about the history of Boston from in the late 1700s?
Well, when they first arrived in 1630.
Oh, in 1630.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And so it's from his perspective of all the history that went on in the Boston buildings.
Well, there was a harbor right next to Faneuil Hall.
Yes.
So he saw all the things that transpired at Faneuil Hall and also then at the old State House.
That's wonderful. And so it's as if though you are drawing from your background as an interpretive ranger for the Freedom Trail. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about how your background sparked this children's book?
I participated in a program at the time called If Buildings Could Speak, where the children would come for about 3 hours and learn about the activities at Faneuil Hall and the old State House, where we voted, and they learned about how important their towns were to the development of the markets. Mm-hmm. And I would have maps to show them, and they would have to vote where they thought the best place for the market would be. And it ended with this really great puppet show.
How wonderful.
It was so fun.
So how long had you served as an interpretive ranger?
13 years.
Okay. And it sounds like you have a real passion for children, for teaching children.
Well, I think my background enabled me to really reach the children that don't have a voice, the autistic kids.
Okay.
And I love the troublemakers.
Uh-huh.
Because I'd have them right up front with me, leading the Freedom Trail. It was really fun.
Well, that's terrific. And the book is so beautifully illustrated. Who did the illustrations for your If Boston Buildings Could Speak?
My sister did the original drawings.
Okay.
And the company that I proudly chose, because there's so many out there, they enhanced the photos and took the liberty to put a baseball cap on Freddie the Fish.
Okay.
Because of the World Series.
Oh, perfect. And what is your sister's name? Let's give her a shout out for her beautiful illustrations.
Well, she doesn't really want me to use her name.
All right, then. But they are really fun and beautiful. It would be really great for our readers to enjoy an excerpt from your book. So could you read something from your children's book that would give people an idea of what their own kids might be reading or getting from getting a chance to read your book?
Right. It's appropriate for ages 6 to 12. And I chose this section here, which features the old State House with Leo the lion and Eunice the unicorn. And there's all kinds of secrets in here. So it says here, when the new building was built in 1713, The king's royal governors mainly used it. The old State House now had the fancy symbols of Great Britain on top. Leo the golden lion, and elegant Eunice the unicorn. For many years, the markets and the town meetings had no place to gather. And it's been very nice that I've had more time to learn about the town meeting and Peter Faneuil particularly. Because I never knew that he was a slave he was a slave owner, which many of them were, but he was a slave trader.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And there's a movement now to actually try to change that name, which...
Change Faneuil Hall's name.
Right.
And what were they thinking of changing it to?
Well, I don't know for certain, but I really think they could add, Faneuil and Crispus Attucks. So I was able to add this section explaining the town meetings, which were defined a place where people who lived in the towns met to pass the laws and discuss issues to serve their community. Faneuil Hall is recognized as the first town meeting. However, men held meetings in their churches about the development of their towns long before 1742. The meetings were used to memorialize the death of Peter Faneuil, which was the first in 1743. Crispus Attucks' body, who is widely recognized as the first Native American, African American to be shot in the Boston Massacre, laid in state there also, for his family could not be notified. So he didn't have anyone to, of his family to know that he had died.
And please educate me. And what was it, because they just couldn't reach them? They didn't know who they were, or what were the circumstances of not being able to notify Crispus Attucks' family?
He was an escaped slave.
I see.
And he had gotten onto the ships.
Okay.
And as a maybe mulatto, I'm not sure. He had lighter skin. And of course, his parents were slaves.
I see. Well, that's really interesting. There is so much to be learned about the history of Boston buildings, especially in our early government. And I think it's a great book, especially given the situation where civics isn't really being taught in schools anymore. And I think your book shows children the importance of government and speaking in public and public debate and policy and all of that kind of stuff that we really need to learn at an early age.
Right.
So that's wonderful.
I do speak about that in the beginning because I'm so happy this is taking me so long to write, because now, of course, it does illuminate the importance of keeping our waterways clear and our planet clean, so reusing, recycling. And I asked the children to speak out about that because it is a very vital issue.
Yes, it is a very vital issue. Now, tell us a little bit about, there's so many things that you could share with us, but tell us a little bit about how your family has had an influence in your writing career.
Well, first off, my dad was always there to help me with my spelling problems as a kid. And I do mention that in my book because I was dyslexic. I couldn't really read or write very well in school. And reading out loud was particularly challenging. So my dad was always there to help me with my spelling. But I do have to say, as a person who believes very strongly in the spirit of my parents, I know that they've guided me to continue to persevere with this story, my mother particularly. They died in 2014 and 16. And so that I just call on them all the time to guide me. I'm wearing my mother's dress, and so it's something that I just feel their presence with me.
I think that's really a beautiful thing. I think that many people, I know myself, I have also felt the spirit of my parents and my different relatives, and I think that many creative people draw on the unseen and the invisible to guide their creativity along. How did you get into becoming an interpretive ranger for the Boston Freedom Trail?
Well, I was very fortunate being disabled. I have had many, many head injuries that I was able to be hired because you can't get a full-time job as a ranger. So I just was very lucky.
And it's did you so you actually walked along the trail and guiding people to the historic sites?
Yeah.
Sounds like a great job.
Oh, funny stories, because they gave me the Philadelphia Flyers to give a Freedom Trail tour for.
The Philadelphia Flyers?
The professional hockey players.
Oh, oh, so you guided the professional hockey players.
I didn't know who they were.
Oh, oh, and how did that go?
Well, I kept looking at them, and they would say, "Oh yeah, we're just drinking buddies." So we get to the end of the Freedom Trail, which ended at the Old North Church, and they took my picture, and they were all excited. And then I walked away, and they came over and asked me if I knew who the Philadelphia Flyers were, and I said no. So they never sent me the picture.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, is there a team outside of the Bruins that we concern ourselves with? Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And what about children? What is your special relationship with children when you are guiding them along? You did mention that you particularly enjoy working with children who are on the autism spectrum. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I always had props. And so they would each have various dolls that they would carry. And I'd have them switch, so everyone had a chance to carry a different doll. And depending on what the story was, I would have that person with the doll, come forward. Or there were just so many things. I find just my creativity was a big asset.
I see.
In being flexible and seeing, who the children were, what they knew. And I was a master at drawing out the persons that were, I think, the quietest.
I see. And you were able to have Honey Boy with you. So was that, no?
Not at the time, no.
Oh.
I didn't get Honey Boy until 2005, which was much later.
I see. So you weren't able to enlist his services necessarily at the time.
But I can't wait to give the tour now, because Honey Boy will love to lead everybody.
Oh, that's great. So you still do that? You still give tours?
Not yet. Actually, it's been a little too cold.
Oh, of course, of course. But it's wonderful that you wrote this book. And we're going to come back in a little while and talk to you more about the process of writing a children's book, which I think is very different from a lot of other genres. And I think that there are many people who are interested in writing this. I think it's wonderful that you have filled an historical niche when it comes to children's books. I think that's of great interest, especially locally. Boston Buildings, the Freedom Trail, Crispus Attucks, and other people. And I know the monument, the Bunker Hill Monument, we're going to get into that. And when we return, we'll hear more from Lauren McGrath. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and we're here with Lauren McGrath, children's author of If Boston's Buildings Could Speak by Freddie the Fish. And what I am anxious to get into are some of the historical characters in your book. For example, you started off by telling us that Crispus Attucks, it was the first person to be shot during the Boston Massacre, and they're actually considering adding or changing Faneuil Hall's name to include his name. Now, see, this is the interesting thing. I did not know that Crispus Attucks was of mixed parentage. I didn't realize that he was part Native American and African American. I know that you also have other historical figures in your children's book. Could you share with us another excerpt from your book about Crispus Attucks?
And there's so much to say, Suzette, in the history, because I did not mention Christopher Sider was the 11-year-old boy that was killed February 22nd. So several weeks before, Crispus Attucks is considered the first casualty of the American Revolution. But this 11-year-old boy was killed.
By British soldiers?
No, actually by, his name was Thomas Hutchinson, I believe. I could be wrong. Oh, Richardson. His name was Richardson. So, like I said, there's just so much to share.
So much to share.
But, so this is a picture here that talks a little bit about certainly the tremendous leader, Samuel Adams. The loudest leader at the town meeting in Faneuil Hall was a man who didn't look very important. His name was Samuel Adams. Never Sam. He's the one that had the idea of dumping all the tea in the Boston Harbor to protest against the tax on tea, December 16, 1773. Much later, it was called the Boston Tea Party. Years before, Samuel Adams was the man who distorted the facts about the night the soldiers killed 5 men right in front of the old State House. He called this event the Bloody Massacre, though in truth it was not a massacre. This was a lie called propaganda. His friends, called patriots, used the tragedy and many other things to get people to hate the British government that much more. The first casualty on that horrid night on March 5th, 1770, was a man named Crispus Attucks. He was an escaped slave. His mother was a Wampanoag Native American from Massachusetts, and his father was taken from his country called Africa.
That is so informative. I did not know that the Boston Tea Party idea was Samuel Adams. Did you guys know that? Okay, I know I'm a little behind in my history. It was never my forte, but it's fascinating. And that I did know that the Boston Massacre was in fact propaganda. That I think that one of the story is that one of the British soldiers freaked out and their gun went off, and then all the shooting started. In fact, weren't they defended by Adams, John?
In the trial, yes.
Yes, John Adams defended the British soldiers,
right.
Yes.
And they were women that testified because they witnessed it happening. There was never an order given to fire.
Right.
And that's one of the main defenses that John Adams used.
It's really fascinating. And I think that your book is going to be so interesting for children to read. I mean, there are facts there that I wasn't even aware of. Or, there's a lot of things in history that we know generally, but the little nuances and things. Now, don't you have a woman I wanted to ask you about? I'm sorry, what was her name again? Jane?
Jane Hale.
Okay. And what is Jane Hale's role in history?
Well, she was the one who wrote an article to actually raise the money to get the monument to the Battle of Bunker Hill finished. It took them 25 years. And it was with the woman bakers as well. I've forgotten, I think they said they raised $30,000. So I mentioned
$30,000 in that day.
Back then, oh yeah, crazy. So I mentioned her toward the end here as Freddie's saying goodbye. And so there's all kinds of secrets because, no one knew how vital the women were to all the events. For example, during the Tea Party, they're the ones that painted the men to look like the Native Americans so they would be disguised and they wouldn't get caught for doing such a treasonous act.
I see. Oh, blame it on the Native Americans. Well, that's terrible. But history found them out. Yeah. Oh, Now, see, that's a really interesting thing that Jane raised $30,000 to complete the Bunker Hill Monument. Who knew? I didn't know that. What are the kind of secrets did you share? Or while I know they may not be in your book, but I'm really fascinated to know what kind of secrets you shared along the Freedom Trail as a ranger.
I mean, I can't exactly remember back then, but it does remind me of the building of the Bunker Hill Monument, because the granite was actually excavated from the John Adams quarries that were in Braintree, because everything, the majority of the area was called Braintree, Quincy, Randolph, Holbrook. It was all Braintree.
Yes.
And there's a great story of the first railroad that was established in Braintree to help get all these large, chunks of granite, up the Neponset River. And it's just phenomenal what they did.
It is phenomenal. When you think about the technology today compared to then and how they were able to do these incredible things. Now, you are going to be doing an event in June. Is it for the Braintree Library?
Yes.
Oh, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we're not certain how it's going to turn out, but it'll be perfect timing because the Battle of Bunker Hill happened June 17th, 1775. And that's when the Siege of Boston began, which historically today is the 333rd day. So it's March 12th today. So Boston's harbor was shut down. They had nothing being imported. And of course, the British soldiers took over everything. It was horrible. People had no privacy in their homes.
That's right.
Anything could be taken from them.
Because they were forced to quarter the soldiers. Well, that's
it's just devastating.
So you're going to be part of an event at Braintree Library, and it's going to be activities for children. You're going to have your book for sale. What's going to happen exactly?
Always activities. I always have activities for the kids. So I got a oven mitt, which was a great color. So they can make a little fish. They can make a Freddie the Fish. I found little Swedish fish, because one is okay.
Yeah.
And so they'll have all kinds of treats, and it should be a lot of fun.
And will Honey Boy be there too?
Probably.
With his three-corner hat. His tri-cornered hat. Oh, that's going to be so cute.
I know. All the kids have to make a tri-corner hat. That's true.
Now, we have about 5 minutes left, and I would love to ask you about your process as a writer. What did you learn about your own writing rhythm or your own writing process in putting this book together?
Well, first off, you never do it alone. I could never have done this had I not had the help of my colleagues when I wrote it way back then, because I was not a writer. So it is a process that takes a long time with lots of editing and lots of people's inputs. So I'm very grateful that I've had a lot of assistance in getting it originally done. And as time has gone on and issues have become more important to people with regards to recycling and such, I was able to incorporate all those things. For example, I never knew that Kwanzaa, which is a secular holiday, goes for 1 week. So on the day that I had submitted one of my final corrections for the book, it happened to have been day 2 of Kwanzaa, which is considered self-determination.
Oh,
so when you think of it, here it is, 2019. It's taken me 11 years to get this published. I do, in my dedication, honor it to Lindsay Liu, who was killed in the Boston Marathon. She was a scholar from China. She was the only daughter.
Oh, yes, I remember.
And I've been trying to get this to the Liu family as a momentum to their daughter.
Yes.
Who, as I said, went to Boston University, which is the university that I graduated from. I did not know her. But I do think that it's important to remember her.
And you say it took 11 years. You know, and it's very interesting because everybody's writing process is very different. Some people can bang things out in a matter of months or a year. And I have had really wonderful established authors who say it took them, years to bring it to fruition. What is your writing process? Are you best in the morning, or do you write randomly through the day? Do you have a schedule for your writing?
I actually don't have a schedule, but I do find it's best to write in the morning. I've been having a discipline to write 30 minutes every day.
Okay, that's good.
And I'm actually been working on a memoir for quite some time because my dad never wrote his. And he was quite the man. Served as a sailor in the Navy. Thank goodness World War II ended. But then he was a CIA agent. But he could never tell me that as a kid, Suzette.
Okay.
Until he was at his end of his life.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So he never wrote his memoir.
Well, then that's going to be another interesting project. And in the minute that we have left, where can we buy your book? Where can we find your book, If Boston Buildings Could Speak?
It's available on my website.
And what's your website?
Winning Wellness Warriors.
winningwellnesswarriors.org. winningwellnesswarriors.org is where you can find the book. That's fabulous. And it's self-published?
Well, no, the publishing company that helped me is called Page Turner Media and Press.
Okay.
And I'm very thrilled because right now they're at an international book fair, because this is an international book.
Yes, it is.
To encourage people to come to Boston. It's very readable. It can be translated into any language. And of course, it's on ebook, which is another great thing.
Okay, wonderful. Is it also available on Amazon or anything like that?
It is.
It's available on Amazon as well. Okay. And what part does little Honey Boy play in your writing world?
He's more of a distraction than anything.
Oh, he's a distraction.
But he's a great distraction.
Too. Oh, he's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Lauren. It was really a pleasure to hear about the history of Boston and how you've applied your talents and your career and your historical insights into a children's book, If Boston Buildings Could Speak, by Freddie the Fish. And we'll see you next time on It's All Write with Suzette. Meanwhile, buy the book. It's so much fun and so enlightening. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Lauren and Honey Boy.
Thank you very much, Suzette.